student. Look at all she's done. All right. So our next speaker is Dr. Zeynep, all the way from Minnesota. So she knows how to run a value-forward, community-centered healing space. I'm really excited to have her talk. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Zeynep.
I don't feel like there we go. Good morning. How's everybody doing? Y'all have been sitting for a while, so we need to get the energy going here a little bit. So hopefully while the remote makes its way back here, wow, I cannot see any of y'all except for these lovely folks in the front. My name is Zeynep Tuzcu, as Renee said. I came all the way from Minneapolis. Somehow it's colder here. I don't know how that happened, but anyways, it's beautiful. Thank you so much for having me. We're gonna get started today with something a little bit different. So, trust the process. I know it might feel a little bit weird. We're gonna start with a little breathing exercise. So I'm gonna have y'all, you're already in a comfortable seat. I know some of you are all seated in the back too. So kind of shake things out a little bit, and then you're gonna find a place of stillness, and you're gonna allow your eyes to close. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so noticing if it feels difficult to close your eyes, if you've got a text that you have to respond to, or a lecture that you're catching up on, I get it. I was there recently. See if you can close your eyes. We won't be here forever. Just start to notice the natural pattern of energy through your body. If you're feeling like your mind is moving really quickly right now, or maybe it's moving really slowly, without making any changes or anything, just simply observe. It's just information. And start to deepen your breath. Feel your belly press out as you inhale, and feel it soften as you exhale. Good. Softening your shoulders away from your ears, relaxing your jaw, releasing your tongue from the roof of your mouth, and softening the area between your eyebrows. Good. Let's take 3 more deep breaths like this. Inhaling, feel that belly come out. And exhale to release. Good, big inhale here. And exhale. Last inhale. Good, exhale, let it all out. And over the next couple moments, you can start to blink your eyes open. Beautiful, welcome back. Thank you for participating in that with me. As we know, deep breathing is a really, really great tool to help lower cortisol levels, right? We're in chiropractic school here. What y'all are doing is not easy. I remember it very well. As we know, cortisol is that stress hormone, right? So we're trying to decrease our heart rate, our blood pressure. It helps increase our oxygen exchange, right? So as our bellies push out, we are taught to just take up less space, right? Even the seats that y'all are sitting in right now, when I was in the airplane on the way over here, we're taught to take up less space, round our shoulders forward, tuck our bellies in, and we can't allow for all that oxygen exchange when we do that. So it's a great way to kind of get through chiropractic school, and it's also a great tool to offer your patients. It took 2 minutes, no time at all. So thank you for doing that. So with the pandemic, folks' physical health is not the only thing that's suffering, right? So we know that more than 24% of Americans are now taking prescription mental health medication, which is also 1 in every 4 people. I am actually one of those 1 in 4 people. I literally just started taking an SSRI, so it's become very clear to me that we need to destigmatize mental illness, particularly in a primarily non-pharmaceutical profession, and understand that everyone has different needs and is suffering in different ways. It's a conversation for another day. But having tools like deep breathing, meditation, whatever else helps decrease your stress levels is super important as a supplement to provide and promote healthy behaviors as students and future practitioners. That was aggressive. Okay, so when my friend and colleague, Dr. Jenna Kiken, asked me to take her place as a part of this conversation, I was super honored and humbled, but I was a little bit having a hard time thinking of something to talk about. There's so many topics to cover in this profession right now. So I'm gonna share with y'all my experience as a woman in this field who decided to open a clinic in the middle of a pandemic, what that journey has been like, and the importance of sticking to your values as a human, regardless of what your plans are after graduation to best serve your patients. The intention for what I'm sharing with you today is that you walk away feeling validated and grounded in your chiropractic career so far and moving forward, and to start to noodle on what values you want to stand on as you move closer to being providers. I also want you all to be involved too. Your voices are super important, so I've got some questions throughout to help you share those voices. So to give you a little bit of background, I was actually born in and adopted from Istanbul, Turkey, by a Turkish dad and an American mom. My adoption was a fairly unique situation, so unlike a lot of folks who are adopted, I was actually able to maintain that cultural connection to my country of origin. We actually still go back to visit my family in Turkey. So I grew up in Minneapolis as an only child. I played soccer and golf growing up, and I sang and played various instruments, and I still do, and I eventually found my way into a yoga practice, which you could probably tell from that breathing exercise. I found this when I was experiencing a really stressful life transition when I was in college, and it really helped me calm my brain and my body while strengthening the two of those as well. So I spent a couple years pursuing a singing career at a small liberal arts college in southern Minnesota. Excuse me, but I ended up transferring to the University of Minnesota in the Twin Cities downtown into my senior year after living in Costa Rica for 6 months. I was finally ready to just be a little bit closer to home. So after graduating with my degrees in psychology and Spanish with a minor in leadership, I accepted a job offer at Target as an assistant store manager. I did a couple internships there the previous summers. I knew it wasn't long-term, but as a fresh college grad, I wanted to have that fresh source of income and feel more comfortable with that right out the gate. So if any of you have worked in retail management or retail at all, you understand that the toll that this takes on the body, right? Early mornings, late nights, holidays, weekends, sometimes even overnights. Usually no social life because of the emotional and physical depletion of all of it. So I learned after a couple years that as much as I loved my team, this career was not meant for me. So I left Target. I pursued a wellness coaching certification through the Mayo Clinic, which is really just an extension of that psychology degree, which is helping me kind of help others come to their own conclusions, asking them questions to draw the information out rather than putting it on them. So between the time that I graduated college and started my career at Target, I had completed my 200-hour yoga teacher training certification. And I was teaching kind of on and off during those transition periods. And I started teaching at a chiropractic clinic. That's how I kind of got into this field. I thought, what a really cool way to incorporate wellness into a practice. So my doctors would actually prescribe yoga classes as part of their patients' treatment plans to help maintain that overall well-being. I've always been kind of the hippie woo-woo gal in my family, as I've been coined, helping my friends' headaches by applying some weird peppermint tincture to their temples, guiding strangers through sun salutations at protests, giving my grandpa ginger chews when he had a stomach ache, the list goes on and on. So I started proudly wearing that title over the years, and as I spent more time understanding the holistic and non-pharmaceutical approach to care that chiropractic provided, I started doing more research and realized that there was maybe a reason that I started teaching yoga at a chiropractic clinic. I applied for school in early 2017, and I started a couple months later. So as you can probably guess, as a Minnesotan, I went to school at Northwestern Health Sciences University, and let me tell you, I really struggled, y'all. I decided to do a split schedule the first couple of trimesters, as it had been a while since I was in school, and even this part-time, which was still 5 courses, felt completely overwhelming to me as somebody with no background in healthcare outside of psychology and yoga. I constantly felt light years behind my classmates, most of whom had actually had a background in healthcare, so thinking kinesiology, exercise science, something related to movement. Everybody seemed to pick up on things so much quicker than I did. I was spending every waking moment studying, little time moving my body or getting good nourishment, and I started seeing changes, right? So I constantly felt inflamed. I couldn't sleep, felt like I was crying all the time. I had severe hormonal acne, digestive issues, and in combination with the ongoing political issues at the time, all these things were starting to take a toll on my relationships. I remember talking to the dean of the college those first few terms and being so angry that I was told that I was going to be successful and it was going to be great. Meanwhile, I felt like I was drowning. So I went to therapy those first few terms of chiropractic school, and I remember realizing that this stress wasn't going to just end, so I had to find a way to deal with it. And both the dean and my therapist said that once we started clinical rotations, I would be so much more comfortable. It obviously wasn't a sustainable solution, but I just had to kind of get through the tough part. So before getting through internship, I had to get through boards, which, as you know, as a person with massive test anxiety, this was not my favorite thing. I just kept reminding myself that my board scores did not determine what kind of provider I would be. So just remember that. I remember taking turns with my classmates saying, yeah, I'm quitting, I can't do this anymore. And whichever one of us was in a better headspace would encourage the other by saying, you know what, let's just sleep on it, Zeynep. Sleep on it and we'll talk about it tomorrow. And none of us ever quit. Finally, we got our doctor's bags, as you can see in that top left photo. I was super amped about it. And we got our white coats, so that's me and my classmates with our white coats down there. And we were finally getting some hands-on diagnostic experience with our internship. And the dean and my therapist were absolutely right. Everything seemed to settle into place. And I absolutely loved actually being able to listen to patients and ask questions to help put those puzzle pieces together. This is really where I started using those motivational interviewing skills that I learned during the health coaching program to help boost me up and help build stronger relationships with my patients. Of course, as interns, in the beginning, it's not so uncommon to feel like we don't know what the hell we're doing most of the time. So once you get there, just know that that's okay if you have that sensation. It's very normal. But as time passed, I felt my stress start to feel a little bit more manageable, finally. And then came the year that changed everything. In February 2020, I was a T7. We operate on trimesters at Northwestern, so that's kind of post-white coat into the clinical experience. I was TAing an extremities course for Dr. Don Egebrecht, and I think that we were going through hip adjustments at the time. I remember discussing with him. Dr. E has taught at the school for many years, and we were kind of talking, we were like, oh, there's like a weird new virus, like it's whatever, it's fine. And he and I confidently agreed that we would be out of school for a few weeks, and then we'd be finishing up knee and ankle in no time. As we know, this obviously did not happen. I went in for a clinic shift at our school downstairs, and I took this picture on the top left there as the proud intern that I was. And I had no idea that it would be my last shift in that space for months. So March rolled around, and I ended my relationship of 6 years the day before Minnesota went into COVID lockdown. So my doctoral education came to a screeching halt just when we got to the part where I started to feel comfortable in my own skin. I was living alone for the first time ever in my entire life. I was grieving the loss of a partnership, and I couldn't see anyone I loved while watching the devastation of COVID on the news without being able to share the grief, anger, anxiety, and stress in a conventional way. The changes I was seeing in my body when stress was at peak during the beginning of chiropractic school were starting to resurface, which is not surprising. And still, I just did what everybody else did. We just kept getting back up. What choice did we have? School was transitioning to virtual. We hadn't quite gotten back to clinic full time yet, and it was massively stressful, but I did feel like we were sort of going into like an organized chaos type of routine. Or at least that's what I was telling myself. On the afternoon of May 25th, 2020, I took a break from studying to find a lock screen full of countless texts, missed calls, and voicemails. Minneapolis, and soon the world, was in a complete state of turmoil from the traumatizing 9-minute and 42-second video. George Floyd's murder circulated and cracked us all wide open. I remember stepping onto my balcony that day, and the air smelled and tasted different in Minneapolis. And it suddenly felt so silly to have to work and have responsibilities to attend to, when I felt like the only things that mattered were just screaming for justice and just looking after each other, providing that mutual aid. I will say I have never seen my community, I've lived in Minneapolis my whole life, I've never seen the community come together more than I did after George Floyd was murdered. And it felt like such a crucial turning point for all of us. For folks who had seen systemic racism as a political issue, it became glaringly clear that it was a human rights issue. And although it wasn't the first tragedy of its kind, the veil was pulled back for so many of us. As a progressive liberal myself, it became quite clear that inaction is injustice. Going into a clinical field, I was already well aware of the striking health disparities between Black, Indigenous, and people of color and white people, particularly in the context of chiropractic, which is notoriously a boutique form of healthcare. But as I felt the waves of grief, rage, and devastation from George Floyd's murder rip through my community and the world, I realized what a place of privilege I held, both as a person who benefits from white privilege and as a future healthcare provider. As chiropractors and holistic providers, we have this really unique opportunity to actually spend quality time with our patients and listen to their needs, and not just their musculoskeletal complaints. Historically and presently, the needs of the BIPOC community haven't been and are not met by their providers. I've heard many anecdotes from patients who come to my clinic just praying I will hear them out and actually help them treat the source of their pain when they've had so many negative experiences before this, feeling like their needs were dismissed and invalidated. So amidst breaks from clinical rotations to make mutual aid runs with my friends and drop off first aid kits at protests, I read and I had difficult conversations with my family and friends to catch up and get grounded in my values as an activist and soon-to-be healthcare provider. One of the many topics that I filled my brain with was the history of abuse and dismissal of BIPOC in the medical field. Think Henrietta Lacks, a Black woman whose cervical cancer cells were harvested without her consent in 1951 and continue to provide life-saving research to this day. And according to court records from 2022, the family has not been compensated. For more information on Henrietta Lacks' legacy, I highly recommend reading The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks by Rebecca Skloot. And even closer to home, Harvey Lillard. We know this name, a black man who was a janitor in Davenport, was the first subject of what would be D.D. Palmer's chiropractic technique. From what I remember, we spent less than an hour discussing Lillard's legacy while I was in school, and more time on Palmer, a white man who had the breakthrough of curing deafness, right? So it's a larger conversation for a different day, but his legacy doesn't carry the space that it should, right? There are countless cases of medical mistreatment of the black community, including the Tuskegee syphilis study, in which hundreds of black men with low incomes were used as test subject and enticed with offerings of free meal and health care with no informed consent. Even throughout my education, the lack of representation of black and brown skin and bodies in clinical courses was astounding. How are we to best serve our patients if we don't even know how symptoms present on anything other than white skin and bodies? Thankfully, there are tools like Mind the Gap, which is a handbook that you can find online that shows clinical signs in black and brown skin, created by Malone Mukwende in the UK. When I was in chiropractic school, anytime there was a required course that had anything to do with cultural competency, some of my fellow students complained about it. Most of them didn't go to class, saying there were much more important things to do, CNS, PNS, embryo, and that this didn't matter as much. I was completely shocked by this. And it seemed like I was the only one advocating for these conversations we were having, and it was super disheartening. I know these conversations can be uncomfortable, and they are vital to how our patient-doctor relationships present, and ultimately how our patient outcomes present. So I'm sharing all this with you for no other reason than to just highlight the importance of actually doing the work to understand unethical practices, even in a more holistic profession. As I researched healthcare disparities within black and brown communities, it became very clear to me that this needed to be a key pillar of my mission as a chiropractor, wherever I ended up. And I don't know if any of y'all are like this, but for me, it's very easy to get caught up in all the world's problems and I just shut down, right? We sometimes call that activist fatigue, right? Or analysis paralysis. We get so wrapped up with everything happening that we just disengage from it completely. So in order to combat that feeling, I just decided to put my blinders on and say, okay, I'm just gonna focus on what's in front of me and what I can control. So I finally completed my clinical internship, all the board's exams, and before I knew it, I had graduated. I didn't get to walk across the stage, but my family and I had an outdoor celebration with my cap and gown. A few weeks prior to my graduation, although I had secured an offer as an associate at my clinic where I did my T10 internship, that final term, I realized that I wanted and needed to start my own practice. What I wanted to offer as a clinic simply didn't exist yet, or if it did, I wasn't able to find it. I called my mom and told her the plan, and although I'm sure she was thinking, what kind of masochist opens a business for the first time in the middle of a pandemic? She said, okay, cool, how can I help? Okay, we were gonna do movement, but I think it's gonna be too much chaos with trying to stand up and sit back down. Oh, we wanna do movement? Oh my God, okay, get up, let's go. Okay, everybody stand up. Even if you're sitting on the floor back there, I saw some of y'all, try to, I know, yes, let it out, do what you gotta do. Maybe rotate side to side a little bit. Good, yes, amazing, I remember it well. You are so welcome, thank you for asking. Big stretching. Okay, now everybody shake it out. Do a little arm shake, leg shake. I know it feels weird, but just do it. Give it a shot. Okay, amazing. Let's all sit back down. I know it's the worst. Hang in there. All right, y'all, let's sit back down here. We just have a little bit more to get through. I know it's hard to stay focused. I appreciate your attention so much. Beautiful, yes. Thank you for using your voice and telling me that you needed a movement break. Love that. Amazing. Okay, so let's bring it back in, Okay, so because of the pandemic, obtaining my license proved to be quite challenging. Lots of delays happened. So I graduated in April 2021. The goal was to open on June 1st. May rolled around, no license. I pushed my open date multiple times before reluctantly landing on August 16th, 2021. I was so eager to open my doors and create this unique chiropractic experience for my community that was hurting so deeply, both emotionally and physically. I decided to use that extra time, though, as I waited for my license to really build my clinic presence in the community. So growing up in Minneapolis, I had spent many years building a community of friends who are artists, athletes, estheticians, stylists, creators, all of whom have a wide community of their own, and they were able to support me as I announced my pain management and prevention services to the community for the first time. So I hired a graphic designer who helped me build my logo, my website, my social media presence, which I'll get to in a second. I met with a bank about setting a business account up. I'd never done that before. I had no idea where to begin, so I reached out to the chiropractors where I previously taught yoga, and I tried to learn more about business insurance, malpractice insurance, what I needed, how to get an LLC. I didn't know any of these things. I built relationships with chiropractic supply companies to help me get all of my equipment. I leaned on my clinical supervisors and mentors to ask questions as they came up, bounce ideas off my colleagues and friends, and leaned on both of my parents. My mom used to be a small business owner in interior design. My dad worked in corporate America. So between the two of them, I had all the tools I needed. I reached out to some of my friends who might know places for rent in downtown. Literally got on Instagram, posted a question, and said, I need a clinic space. Who can help me out? And that's how I ended up in my space. So as I built my clinic, as I said, there were certain things that I knew for sure that I wanted as a part of my vision and my mission. My graphic designer and I quickly became close friends as we were exchanging emails and FaceTime calls at all hours of the day and night. And I remember trying to narrow down this color scheme and symbol. I wanted my Turkish heritage to be involved somehow, so I started thinking about Turkish words that resonated with me. Universal spirituality resonates with me deeply as a part of my own personal faith. So standing on that, I chose the word evren, which means universe in Turkish. Side note, on the first day of being open, a patient pointed out to me that evren is actually nerve spelled backwards, which was a complete accident. I was like, nuh-uh, that's so cool. Yeah, had no idea. So that worked out great. Cosmic. And this is kind of that's on the bottom there, that's the evren, and then we'll get into the logo here. So as I tried to think of my logo, one thing kept coming to mind over and over again. I was very close with my grandpa, who passed away in 2017, just before I started chiropractic school. He had Parkinson's disease, which, as we know, is a degenerative neurological disorder affecting primarily motor function in the central nervous system. So even before his diagnosis, he was always exploring alternative and holistic ways of healing various health issues. So he tried the apple cider vinegar cleanses, he made every smoothie in the book, and he was always asking me, Zeynep, what do you think of this? When I would show him some new type of food or drink, he would always say, now why can't we get this back at home? Meanwhile, he lived in a small rural town of South Dakota of 1,200 people, so that's probably why. He did every type of physical therapy in the book he could to keep the Parkinson's symptoms at bay. And he was notoriously strong, both mentally and physically. Every time I went to see him, we would drive to the church and take a couple laps and then practice standing on one foot at a time, as you can see in that photo there. Being a yoga teacher, he always wanted me to help him into tree pose. And he, regardless of the challenge, always would say, everything is looking up, and he would do like a big thumbs up. And I vividly remember when his health took a turn for the worse. It was not long after a very unfortunate experience with one of his providers who told him, your Parkinson's is never going to get better. I remember being so upset that the provider did this. Although it was likely truthful, my grandpa's mindset about the whole thing was truly what helped him maintain his resilience throughout his whole life. And the delivery of this information is what I truly believe started a cascade of declines. At this point is when I realized that this was just unacceptable, and if I were ever in a position to provide care in any capacity, I would do everything in my power to avoid this. So I'll talk about the importance of language in a little bit. So as I said, my grandpa passed away in the spring of 2017, just before I started school. On my way home from his funeral, I received my acceptance letter to chiropractic school. So I always say that that was kind of his gift to me. When we returned home, there was a cardinal perched on the tree outside my parents' house. My mom said she immediately knew it was Grandpa, there to comfort her. And I was like, it's just a coincidence, but okay. A few weeks later, I was sitting in my living room where I live downtown. My neighbor sent me a photo that she had just taken of my patio, and I got up to look, and there was a cardinal perched on the railing of the 5th floor of my condo. And I smiled, and I was like, okay, it's him. It seems like every time we're least expecting it and need a little bit of extra support in my family, a cardinal shows up. Yeah. When it came time to come up with a logo for my clinic business, it was important for me to find something that was symbolic of healing and support. So I told my designer my grandpa's story, and that we had to find a way to incorporate the cardinal into my logo to represent my grandpa and his love and persistence in the face of challenge and pain. So you can see the final result here, the cardinal and the circular shape of the globe in that bottom left there. The top right is kind of the progression of the whole thing. Got like lines coming together to signify connection and community, and that general upwards orientation to kind of reflect that idea of everything is looking up. So that's kind of how we came together with that logo. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit. So in chiropractic school, I was often told not to engage in particular issues with my patients, thinking things like money, religion, politics, to name a few. I didn't really follow that direction. So here's what I decided. These things affect each and every one of my patients deeply. and ultimately have an important impact on their overall health outcomes, right? So I realized it was important for me, at the very least, to simply hold space for the conversations around the issues. There are many studies supporting the hypothesis that levels of pain perception, exhaustion, and difficulties with active coping are generally higher when patients are under psychological stress. So we know there's a correlation there. My philosophy has always been, if it affects my patients, it affects me. For example, I have a patient who's a single mom who works 3 different jobs to support her children. So for her, money is a major stressor, and it could have easily prevented her from getting care. I offer a sliding scale. She was able to get into one of those slots and get care that way. She also noticed that when money was tight, her headaches got worse. So of course I'm going to hold space for that and do what I can to support and co-manage. Another example, I have a patient who is Black, queer, and currently transitioning in a social and political climate that essentially views them as a threat. So in addition to fibromyalgia flare-ups and generalized chronic pain, they're dealing with debilitating mental health issues that often prevent them from leaving the house. Not only are the hormone therapies they're using for their transition interacting with some of their mental health medications, there is a deeply anti-LGBTQIA+ rhetoric in our current political society. So for them, politics are a major stressor and play a huge role in their overall well-being. Last example, I have a patient who grew up in a devoutly Muslim family. As she's gotten older, she's felt a little bit less connection to that side of her culture and feels guilty letting her family down by not engaging in certain parts of it. The pressure that she feels put on her by her family is a major stressor, and she feels that this stress and pressure directly correlates to her upper back tension. So even from these few examples, we can see that all the issues that we are told not to engage in clearly impact our patients and their well-being. Being authentic and open about these issues helps build stronger patient-doctor relationships, and in my experience, improves patient outcomes. So just like we can generally tell when someone is being real with us, our patients can tell when we're being real with them, and it makes a huge difference. Has anybody here heard the term biopsychosocial? Just show of hands real quick without thinking about it. Cool. Okay, we have a few people who've heard this term. So as you can see in the examples that I provided, if we truly take that biopsychosocial approach, which from my perspective is examining the biological, psychological, and social factors, we can uncover so many important aspects of potential triggers for a patient's pain just by asking questions. My intake forms are very thorough. Yes, of course, I ask in-depth questions about musculoskeletal health, but I also want to know all about their health history, even if it doesn't seem relevant to the patient. I want to know everything. So for those of you who are studying functional medicine in any capacity, you may know that this is a familiar principle, that everything is connected. So to ensure I'm getting all this information, my exams take a long time, y'all. I spend about an hour and a half with my patients on that first visit. So being in cash practice, this is of course a little bit more flexible for me. It's definitely a personal choice to be a lower volume clinic. Many of my patients, as I said before, come to my clinic with chiropractic horror stories of providers who didn't make them feel safe or heard, didn't ask consent before performing adjustments or tests, primaries who listed off medications that they would need to take if they didn't lower their blood pressure, change their diet, or lose weight. Every time I hear these stories, my heart breaks a little bit. So potential controversial opinion here. I never want my patients to feel like there's something wrong with them. How many of you have ever been nervous to go to the doctor's office? Without thinking about it, raise your hands. That's it. Wow. I'm shocked. So there is actually, I am one of those people who has always been a little bit scared to go to the doctor's office. It's actually really not that uncommon. It even has a name. It's called iatrophobia. According to Cleveland Clinic, 1 in 3 Americans avoid going to their doctor even if they feel they need medical care. There can be a lot of fear around how the provider will act. We feel this need to impress them and brace ourselves for what's wrong with us. So how do we bridge this gap? Language is massively important. So instead of telling your patients, well, you're really messed up, but don't worry, I'll fix it, which gives the patient the impression that you are indispensable to their healing, we instead empower the patients to take control of their well-being in a world where it sometimes feels like we have very little control over things. So at the initial visit, I always say some variation of, you've been living in your body a lot longer than I've known you, so if anything doesn't feel right at any point, or if you want to stop, let me know. Patient is in full control of their treatment, I just provide the guidelines. When I notice results outside of normal limits during the exam, I ask the patients what they noticed before sharing what I found. This ensures that they get to share their sensations and their pain and gives me important information. Again, patient is in full control. They'll usually say, well, this side felt not as flexible as the other, everything seems to be worse on the right. And then when I share with them what I noticed, and there are usually some things that overlap, I share some potential causes, I ensure that they understand what I'm saying before moving on to other therapies. This gives the chance of the patients to get to know their bodies a little bit better again. And again, patient is in full control. So before I adjust my new patients, I walk through what the upcoming adjustment might feel like so they know what to expect, even if they've been adjusted a zillion times at another clinic. Every practitioner is a little bit different, and again, patient's in full control. When adjustments and therapies are complete, I go over rehab and exercises with the patient, remind them that a big part of what our work is what happens outside the clinic, and I'm honest and authentic with them, and I tell them it might take some time to see some progress with their symptoms, and it's okay if that feels frustrating, that I'm there to support them through that. I tell them to try to get to know their bodies better. So noticing the triggers for their pain, whether they're biological, so thinking food sensitivity or injury, psychological, thinking high stress, or social, lack of support, and write them down. So not viewing things as good or bad, rather just information about the body. So I tell my patients to try and delete the words good and bad from their vocabulary when they're speaking about their bodies. The book, The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk, has become my Bible at the clinic. If you have not read this yet, do so immediately. He speaks to the idea that the body stores trauma and stress on a cellular level and notes once you start approaching your body with curiosity over fear, everything shifts. When patients come back and report what they've learned, how they're feeling, I have 3 questions I ask at every single return visit after we talk about how their symptoms are presenting. How have your stress levels been since your last visit? How are you sleeping? And how are you doing with nourishment, food, and water? These 3 questions can reveal a lot about my patient's pain and open up a much larger conversation about their overall well-being. I spend 30 to 40 minutes with each returning patient, again, personal choice. Why do I do this? Well, I might not be super high volume. I actually then have the time to listen to my patients and customize a treatment plan for them, which is really what we're supposedly priding ourselves on in this profession, right? To root cause the issue and treat every individual's needs individually, rather than performing the same 7 adjustments on everybody and expecting outstanding results across the board. So my background is in yoga and meditation, so it's well within scope for me to provide different ways to promote stress management. I'm taking a break from it right now, but I was teaching 2 yoga classes per week at my clinic, so patients could have built-in rehab in a space where they're comfortable. This is certainly a part of integrative care. Integrative care is quite a buzzword these days, so trying to get to the bottom of it, I was speaking to Northwestern about it. I was interviewed by them a couple months ago and asked this exact question. And all I could think was, integrative care is just a collaboration between various healthcare providers coming together to provide the best care for our patients. This approach takes a lot of vulnerability though, right? Because it requires us to admit that we actually don't know everything. After all these years of schooling, all the boards, all the blood, sweat, and tears, we still don't know everything. When we can surrender to that and work with other providers, knowing that there's no right or wrong, just information from different lenses, we can truly serve our patients to the best of our abilities. We might even learn something from each other in the process. So to better support my patients, I've developed a spreadsheet of various holistic wellness providers in our area. So that includes primary care providers, mental health professionals, acupuncturists, massage therapists, with whom I work to co-manage and provide integrative care for my patients. When I was in school at Northwestern, I worked at a free clinic called ICM, Integrative Care Clinic of Minnesota. This was hands down my favorite clinical internship rotation because I got to work alongside massage therapist interns, acupuncture interns, and even medical students from the University of Minnesota. So there, as you can probably guess, was a little bit of resistance initially, but we all learned to work together to interview our patients, develop a holistic care plan together, and then implement it, and bounce ideas off of each other in the process. This is like the ultimate dream for me, is to have an integrative clinic where all fields can work together in the same space. I've also noticed a trend of gatekeeping in our profession. It's definitely improving, but there's this idea that we, the providers, can only share that information with our patients like only when they need it and only to that patient. So we saw this a little bit with Dr. Sandy's presentation, which was amazing, just having those tools accessible to patients whenever they need them. It's difficult to find the time. Sometimes I, too, am staffless. I'm the only person at my clinic. But I still create instructional videos for social media, including stretches and exercises, as well as stress management tools for my patients so that they can have access to that information all the time, whenever they want. Right after the first visit, I build a rehab program for my patients using PhysiTrack, which is not an ad, I just really, really like this tool, so they can have access to videos, sets, and reps of each exercise that we discuss. I'm currently in the process of implementing a 5-day virtual check-in to see how the movements are going, which will ultimately help with compliance, but also lets the patients know that I'm on their team and I'm there to support them. An important part of integrative care is bridging the gap between holistic, non-pharmaceutical healthcare and traditional Western healthcare. So if patients come in with various diagnoses or things that they're kind of questioning or have some thoughts on from their primary, I will ask their consent to call their MD and have an open, honest conversation with them and discuss options. The takeaway here is that we're all on the same team. I know that bridging the gap is a really slow journey, but we're again in a huge place of privilege where if we choose to, we can put in the work and carve out the time to remind other providers we all just want what's best for our patients. There's so much power in teaching our patients body awareness, listening to triggers, getting different kinds of treatments depending on different symptoms. For example, for patients suffering from lack of sleep, hormonal issues, or digestive problems, I will provide whatever tools I think are helpful, and then I'll co-manage with acupuncture and potentially a dietitian, for example. If patients feel like they're routinely tense when they come in for a treatment, like no matter, I do a lot of muscle work at my clinic too, and if we just can't get through that tissue, I'll try to get them scheduled for body work and massage close to when they're getting adjusted. There's this sense of relief that I've seen with patients simply knowing that their needs are being heard. Their pain is being identified and named, and they're being validated and seen. This is another takeaway from Bessel van der Kolk's book. Okay, so that was a lot. So to recap, if you are struggling with chiropractic school, and this might not apply to you at all, you might just be like coasting through and like just killing it, and I love that for you. If you are not, it is okay, y'all. What you are doing here is not easy. If it were easy, everybody would do it, right? So spend time with people who lift you up and make you feel confident and empowered. This is not a competition, right? We are all after the same thing. For the love of all things, please ask for help. I constantly had tutors in chiropractic school. It is simply not worth it. It's not worth the adrenal fatigue to do otherwise, I promise. We live in a very individualistic society, y'all, where you're expected to fend for yourselves and just figure it out. I promise you, you will save yourself so much time and energy by asking questions, even if you think they're stupid. Honestly, you can literally call or message me and I will answer the questions for you if I can. Honor your feelings. If you're feeling stressed, lean on your people. Even if it feels impossible, move your body in a way that feels good. Breathe deep, put yummy, nutritious foods into your body to fuel it, and don't be so hard on yourself when you aren't able to make those things happen. Give yourself a little bit of grace, honor the ebbs and the flows, and ask yourself, what would I tell my patient if they were coming to me with these same issues that I am experiencing? The empathy that we gain from these experiences will ultimately help us become excellent practitioners. So regardless of the path that you choose after you graduate, stick strongly to your values as a human being. Yes, you will have the fancy letters behind your name. We love that. And you're a human first. Your chiropractic career is an extension of you. So let that shine through. Even if everybody is telling you it won't work, just try. The worst thing that could happen, it doesn't work, you reroute. Get really clear on your intentions. We talked about the chiropractic why. Why are you here? What do you want to do to change the world? What do you want your patients to know about you? Let that come through really strongly. I have been met with quite a bit of resistance from folks in our field who don't think that the way that I run my clinic is sustainable, spending a longer time with people. Well, I will tell you what. I have only been open 1.5 years, and I have an incredibly strong connection with each and every one of my almost 300 patients, which allows me to uncover parts of their health journey that I might not be able to otherwise. And it was not easy getting here. It was not easy to getting to that amount. I was seeing like maybe 2 to 3 patients a week when I first opened, y'all. It takes time to build that up, and I'm still in that process. My patients know what I stand for. They know what my values are, and they are sustaining me and my practice. And we learn from each other every single day. And ultimately, in the stress of the world, at the very least, if all I can offer my patients is 30 to 40 minutes of peace in their day, I will take that. Stress is not going anywhere, but we have the ultimate privilege of people who are struggling trusting us with their care. So we get to be authentic, hold space for our patients to be vulnerable, and help them uncover the versions of themselves that they may have been hiding under pain for many years. It's really the best gift that I could ask for as a business owner and a practitioner. And it has made and does make every second of blood, sweat, and tears in my education and life worth it. So trust your gut. Encourage your patients to do the same. It will take you so far in your career. I promise you that. So we'll come through with one last little breathing exercise. So close your eyes without thinking about it. Allow your body to be still. Soften your jaw. Soften the area between your eyebrows. Just absorbed a lot of information, so just allow everything to settle. Big inhale through your nose. Good. Exhale, sigh it out. Remember that you know what to do. Your breath is always there to guide you. You can blink your eyes open. So thank y'all so much. If you want, this is my QR code here for my website that has all my information on it. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Okay. Those are some really amazing talks this morning, and we still have a couple more amazing talks to go. And then we got the picnic in the afternoon, free food, chance for your cohort to win $500 for dinner in the cohort tug of war, volleyball tournament. I heard there's going to be Pin the Sacrum on the Spine by Sapka. There's a lot of really great things. That's going to be over in Fremont in just a little bit. But before then, I'm going to invite up onto the stage from Standard Process, Dr. Carl Schippler, Courtney Kurt, and Karen Love, to present the Dr. Michael Dobbins Excellence in Nutritional Education Award.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Where's his name?
Michael Cooley.
Michael Cooley? Okay. Can I get him up here right now? Can I bring him up right away? Hey, Michael, why don't you come up with us right now? So Michael is the Dobbins Award winner. I don't know if you guys know much of Dr. Dobbins' history. Dr. Dobbins was a proud